Before there was Grand Theft Auto, Manhunt, and Hatred, there was Postal. Released all the way back in 1997, this overhead shoot-'em-up was a lightning rod for controversy, maligned by parent groups and labeled a mass murder simulator by critics. Now, all the death and destruction has come to the Switch in the form of Postal Redux, a remake with slightly better graphics, a few extra levels, and a brand new ending. After nearly a quarter century, console owners will finally have a chance to see what all the fuss is about. And while this old-school shooter may not be as shocking as it once was, it still remains a fun little action game that holds up surprisingly well. I wouldn't worry too much about the plot if I were you. It's vague, and we're dealing with an unreliable narrator who seems to believe that the local Air Force base has unleashed some sort of mind-altering chemical on his hometown. Believing that he's the last sane person around, our unnamed protagonist sets out on a mission to kill everybody responsible for this infection, which quickly spirals into a cross-county killing spree where nobody is safe. Look, it's obvious that this guy is no hero. He's clearly suffering from some sort of mental condition and is more than a little pissed off about getting evicted. Guys, I was never under any illusion that he was the only sane person as he gunned down cops, gang members, soldiers, and innocent bystanders. In that sense, the critics of the mid-1990s were right. Postal is indeed a mass murder simulator. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because the idea of playing a villain in a horror story is intoxicating. I mean, who wants to be Paul Allen in American Psycho if they can be Patrick Bateman? Now, the journey to the Air Force Base is spread across 17 levels, all of which play out exactly the same way. We run into each area with one goal: kill all the hostiles. That is to say, anybody who has guns, grenades, missile launchers, or any other kind of weapon. Once we've cleared the place out, we move on to the next stage where we do the whole thing all over again. It may be fun, but it's clearly not a very deep shoot-'em-up. The variety comes in both the stage designs and the weapons, which include everything from shotguns to assault rifles to flamethrowers. Although small and contained, the levels are wonderfully detailed and manage to have their own identity. We get the usual classic horror locations that you would expect, like the truck stop or the sleepy suburban streets, as well as a few fun surprises. I loved seeing the chaos unfold as the killer interrupts a parade, murders everybody at a carnival, and gets into a shootout on a mini golf course. And then on top of the 17 stages found in the original game, Postal Redux also adds 6 additional stages that'll take us on an international killing spree. These locations are even more outlandish, featuring everything from a supermarket to a fancy mansion to major cities in Japan. They're also larger, more open, and brighter in tone. This is a nice change from the dark and grimy look of the first 17 stages. And it made me wish that there was more of the new content to play through. And that brings us to the problems in Portal Redux, which are largely the same problems that plagued the original game. A lot of the issues revolve around the combat, especially when it comes to dodging bullets. This game is bad about showing you who's firing and where it's coming from, a problem that is only amplified when they blend in with the busy backgrounds. It doesn't help that they are simultaneously hard to shoot and able to take tons of bullets before they go down. For their part, the developer seems to be aware that the gameplay can be an issue, so they paint an X over the bad guy just to show you that you have the shot lined up perfectly. That helps, but ultimately underscores the problems. And for as much as I like the varied level designs, they also contribute to this issue. We're given a fixed isometric camera perspective that generally gets the job done, but can be a real nightmare when enemies are hiding between buildings and behind walls. The aiming is frustrating enough when you can actually see who you're shooting at, so you can imagine how much worse it is when you can't see the bad guy. It all adds up to a game filled with cheap shots, especially when you bump up the difficulty level. Look, there's no question that the game feels dated, but I was surprised how well Postal holds up. While the gameplay could use a little tweaking, I was surprised by the exciting action and the nice variety of stages. And more than anything else, it's just a lot of fun looking through the window of what was considered controversial just a quarter century ago. After decades filled with manhunts and grand theft autos, this simple, overhead shoot-'em-up comes across as tame in comparison. It's no longer controversial or subversive, but rather is just another dual-stick shooter on a modern console. When it comes right down to it, Postal glorifies mass murder in the same way that Smash TV glorifies game shows. "23 years after becoming a lightning rod for controversy, Switch owners will finally have a chance to cause total carnage in Postal. While the gameplay could use a little tweaking, and there are just too many cheap hits, this updated remake shows that the original game holds up surprisingly well. It's filled with the fun and diverse level designs that we don't always get with this style of dual-stick shooter. I especially like the 6 new stages that take us to Japan. Yeah, it still has most of the problems that plagued it back in 1997. But Postal Redux makes a strong case that the original game had a lot more going for it than just controversy. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is the most controversial game of all time? From Night Trap to Mortal Kombat to Custer's Revenge, there have been a lot of controversial games over the years. What do you think is the most controversial game of all time? Let me know in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a massive debut of EGM and the launch games. It's going to be a 4-part series starting with us looking at 1989 through 1991. Yeah, that doesn't sound like much, but I guarantee that this is going to be a packed episode. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,